So hey guys, how you doing?
Fantastic. How's it going with you?
Good.
Good.
So how was your week?
Week was busy. We're not done. So it's gonna be Friday. We're still not done, that's how you do it, right? Busy's good, but it's been a great week so far.
Yeah, definitely. Well, after hearing that you have a long week, you're not done yet. So let's just get through this so you can be really done and start your weekend, right? So
That's all right. No, this is good.
so I'm kind of standing between you and the weekend. So that's a tough place for you to be. Thanks. I appreciate it.
Good wind down. It's
I
all
know,
right.
I appreciate that pressure. Okay. So tell me about yourself. What do you guys do? Where are you located? How was, what made you guys busy this entire week?
Absolutely. Yeah. Did you want to take
question,
who
yeah.
we are? Yeah.
Yeah, I'll be happy to help. So I'm Sherri and this is Lou, and we are the Lou Everett group. We are a married couple, and we are business and executive leadership coaches and corporate trainers. And we really focus on leadership development and effective communication for small businesses. And we do that by providing direct strategies with our proprietary coaching method that we have come up with through our 4.5 decades of combined experience working in the corporate and the real world experience. And we help really to prevent toxic work cultures, as well as provide compliance training such as diversity and inclusion. So we love transforming today's leaders through our coaching and training and educating.
That probably comes in handy on a day-to-day basis as a husband and wife team, huh?
Now, coaching a small business and coaching your wife are a little two different things. I don't coach my wife. Oh, we do. I'm teasing. We coach each other. We help each other.
Yeah, that's actually a pretty cool thing when you have a husband and wife team, and then you actually build a business together because that's part of your family legacy, and it's part of the family what you guys are building together. So the money stays in the business and it stays in the family, and then you grow that. I think that's a great recipe for families itself to sustain themselves over time. But that's a different topic. So congratulations on that success you guys have been doing for 20 plus years in the business. So you talk about leadership coaching for small business. Describe your proprietary process as much as you can, as much as you would like. What would someone working with you, what would they experience? What would they go through step 1, step 2, and then what kind of results do you provide to those leaders?
Yeah, sure. Well, we're all leaders, right? I mean, that's ultimately the reality is that everyone that exists is a leader in some fashion. But as business owners, leadership takes on a whole different dynamic. The responsibilities take on a different dynamic. How you're viewed in the community takes on a different dynamic. So to answer your question, our proprietary coaching method is based on the 10 principles that we have developed called the empowerment method. And the empowerment method is based on 10 principles that every leader must follow in order to lead with influence. And by leading with influence, that's really what it's all about. How you influence people is exactly what leadership is. And so we take that and out of those 10 principles, and feel free at some point, we could certainly have a whole entire another episode on just those principles. But those principles are encompassing, starting with 1 all the way down to 10, and the first one is inevitably the most important, and that is the me principle. As a leader, it all starts with you and it ends with you. So it's imperative that the self-development, the development of you as a person, needs to take priority and precedence, because you cannot be a successful leader in any business or organization, even if it's your own, unless you develop and lead yourself first. There's no way to do it successfully over time. It's not sustainable.
Yeah.
So that is our method. That is what our method's called, right? Everyone that we work with, all of our clients we call our clients partners, by the way, which kind of gives you the idea of how we really work with people. It's a partnership. And initially, we start right off with understanding them as a business. Why do they start their business? What is their purpose? What is their why? What are their What are their core values? What are their mission? What's their vision? And most of the time, there's a gap in there somewhere where they're not sure, or it's not clear. Even for people who've been in business for some time. So it gives a great starting.
Well, we also find out where they are too. You know, we don't plow through going, here's our program and here's what it is, and put people in boxes, because everybody is unique. I mean, think about it. At the end of the day, we're in the people business, and we need to go where folks are to figure out where the holes are and the gaps that we can help and say, okay, out of our toolbox, this is where we can help and bridge those gaps.
No, that's well said. I love that approach, because a lot of times, you know, when I've experienced that when I enter into a business, you know, without just meeting the staff, the way the staff greets you, the way the systems in the business work, that gives you a great insight as to the leadership of the owner, you know, because that actually, you know, the leader, as you said, the leader, you know, draws the line in the sand. This is the mission, this is the vision, this is our culture statement, this is how we're going to operate. And that has to be provided to the team. And a lot of times when you walk into a business, you have a bad experience. That person may have had a bad day or something like that, or the last hour something happened. But if you see a pattern develop, you know, we link that to, okay, they need some training, because the leader or the leader of that organization is leading them, and they're seeing that. So it's like a pattern that's happening, but that pattern comes from someplace. So I love what you said about the accountability piece. It starts with the top, and then that has to be, you know, that's the foundation, which is interesting. The top is the foundation, but then you move forward in that process. So that's great. I think that's wonderful. What are some of the great results you've seen, and what are some of the feedback that you received from some of the business owners that you've worked with?
Yeah. Real quick, something you said there that I want to touch on. How you said how interesting it is that from the top we have to start at the bottom, meaning with ourselves. But the reality of it is, as a leader, right? A true leader, real leadership, true leadership is non-positional. So the highest form of leadership truly is at that lower level where you're leading up, or you're leading out to people. Okay, it's non-positional. That's true successful leadership is non-positional. It's more of an outward impact, and not an upward or downward impact.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. So anyway, I heard you get ready to answer that question about
We have several.
case studies, examples. So did you want to start with one, or do you want me to?
No, I can start with one.
Go
So we have one. He's an electrician by trade, and he's been in his business for several years. And he had about himself and about a half employee at the time. And he was making at that time about prior to us about $60K for the year.
At the end of that, yes, right. The year that he came to work with us, yes, before he worked with us, it was about 65K that year in total revenue.
Right. And so he knew he had that legacy in mind. And I think that's a really great thing. Anybody that works with a coach, business coach, whatever level that you want, is to be open-minded and have that legacy. It's just like, I know I got something out there, but I just need someone to be a soundboard and to really pull that out. And that's exactly what we've done. We work with him on a biweekly basis and to follow the process. And we're the type of coaches that it's not us telling them what to do. Right. It's just asking the right questions, so it pulls that out, and they come up with those answers.
The right solution. Right,
the right solutions. That accountability. Right. So knowing that, right? I mean, he was the great candidate, and so in that was a setup. And now being with us for less than a year, he's on track to make over $250K by the end of this year. Not only does he have, a full-time employee, but he actually has a staff now. He's ramping up. He's, really growing in very strategically, and not just a crash and burn type of situation. Right. So that, that's just one of the aspects. But along the journey, he has learned so much from even the first time that we even met him through networking. So it's been an amazing journey with him.
Yeah, he's developed personally with him and his family. which is where it begins, and it carries over into his business, and going from within a year, going from just hiring one employee as another electrician now to having a total of 2 employees working on the 3rd employee within under a year,
Nice.
and 500 times more than what he was making as a business. And not in retrospect, think about this for a second. That's $250,000. He can duplicate this process in 4 years, be a millionaire. Just think about that for a second, right? If he went from 65K revenue in his small business to 250K the next year, which even if he just doubles it, he'll be at $1 million this year. So even if he follows the same process now, he'll within 4 years he'll be a millionaire. And you see, that's what it's all about. That's what it's all about. And that's just one example.
Yeah, yeah. So you definitely dig deep and you really identify what's happening, and then you obviously, it's not a cookie cutter approach, which I can appreciate that. So thank you for being one of those coaches that you're against the cookie cutter approach. I don't like the cookie cutter approach. It's very personalized, which is very important and necessary, because it depends on the type of individual that you're working with. So in terms of the definition, or the broader definition of leadership, how would you define not necessarily just the leadership role, but what are the characteristics of what would make a good leader be a good leader?
Yeah, successful leader, right? And that's where our empowerment method comes in. Those 10 principles comes in. Outlines those principles and following very strategic principles about who you are as a leader. It all starts with you. It all ends with you. We talk about when we're giving and we're leading other people. If you are of the mindset of servant leadership, right? And then you're thinking, okay, I'm just giving and giving and giving, which is good, but you have to give yourself first. I mean, and it sounds selfish, but even those of us that think I really should put other people first, okay, but you can only give to other people at the limit of your own growth. If you're here, you can only give to here. That's just it. If you want to give more to your family, if you want to give more to your employees, if you want to give more to your business, then you have to give yourself more to grow first so that you have more to give. Does that make sense? So I mean, that really is the core crux of really starting off and understanding and that's your whole life as a leader. Mm-hmm. Everything that you do and decisions you make need to revolve around that. And leadership is influence. Mm-hmm. It's nothing more, nothing less. It's influence. That's it. But a good, positive, influential leader does have certain character. In order to really lead with influence is what creates positive results in one aspect, but you can also lead with influence and get negative results. Right? Good examples of those of world-renowned leaders that we all know of. I'm going to give you 2 leaders that are in the history books, have made huge impact and influence all over the world, but are very different leaders. The first one, Martin Luther King Jr., did not have a positional title of a leader. He was known as one because of his influence based upon what he believed in and the impact that it had on society, and still has to this day, and should continue to have on to this day, in a positive light. In a positive way. People followed him because they wanted to, not because they had to. The second leader I'm going to give you the example of, to compare the two, as a leader as well, but a big difference, Adolf Hitler. World leader, but a terrible one at that. The influence that he had changed for the negative. It's 2 leaders, 2 different outcomes, which explains exactly why just because you're a leader in a position or a leader of your business doesn't mean that the outcome's just going to be great. It means that depending on how you harness the type of leader you want to be, the leadership style you want to be, that impact the outcome of your business and the community around you.
Yeah, and I certainly understand. I like the way you position it, because it's 2 different extremes so that people can understand what it takes to we all think of leadership as this Shangri-La and crown royal moment of, oh my goodness, but leadership can do some really detrimental things to a larger society. That is still leadership, because you can't be a leader in a vacuum. You need to have followers to do what you're doing as a leader, because they believe in that belief system. So in its raw definition, yeah, you're right. I would use those extremes as well, because that just gives an example to highlight, careful who you put in leadership power, and careful who you identify as a leader based on their intent and based on the outcome of their action of the intent, put it that way. So that, those characteristics can be very interesting. So, that's an interesting point. So I would ask this question. It came to mind. Situational leadership is also pretty key to understanding, because at a $65,000 business a year, that's one type of leadership. At a $250,000 business a year, that's a different style of leadership to take it to the next $500,000 level. Would you say that shifting situations requires, like you said, you can only take the resources as far as you can go in order for you to build your business or to build your organization to the next step? The leader has to take the role to change. And would you think that's probably one of the key elements for an organization to move in either direction, to move forward?
Yeah, I agree with that, because, and the reason being is because it's very common. It's just that level. It really is, until you actually do some personal development and really find and be around people that are above you, so to speak. And I'm meaning like to stretch you, that are maybe a few years, or just where you are in business, even in life too. I mean, it all revolves, that people that are ahead of you, and that's a good thing. They can do stretch, right? So that's the same thing. So when people get into business, small business owners, we love it. We're in the trade, whatever it is, business, service, product, that's great. But what got you there the first 2 years is going to be different for the next year in business. And it's interesting. I know when we were working this business this time around versus back in 2005, we didn't think that way. We're just kind of thinking the immediate and what was in front of us and what we needed and what was a sale. So that was just a different mindset. Now, knowing what we know now, it's like, oh, wait a minute, there's a bigger picture here. And so I think that is a really good element, especially as a small business owner or as an entrepreneur, maybe the first time. What you did in the hustle, it's not long lasting.
That's right.
Right?
Sustainable.
It's not sustainable.
No. And it's like this. I'm not a rock climber. I'll be the first to admit it, but I know of those that are. So I'll use this as an analogy. If you're just starting out as a beginner, I know for me, if I was going to begin to do rock climbing, you go into the gym or to the rock climbing station and you're learning, right? And so as you start, you become pretty decent as you get to a certain level. But how do I get to the next level?
Yeah.
How do I get from where I am now to that next level of climbing? Well, I have two options. I can do it on my own and try to fight through it and learn the hard way, learn what does work, what doesn't work, what tools I should be using. Oh, that's the terrible tool. I'll go with this one because that person said it on YouTube. I can do that, and eventually I'll get there. Or the better alternative that we've learned over the years is, hey, you know what? You have been rock climbing for like 20 years. What do I have to do for you to show me and mentor me and coach me so that I can make to this next level?
Yeah.
And that's who I'm going to go to, right?
Yeah.
That's what we need to do in business. We've got to get to the next level, because where we are now is a different thinking. It's a different type of leading than just like you had mentioned with our partner there that now has 3 employees. He's reached 250K, or he's going to hit more because we actually push him to get higher. He's going to hit more this year than he expected. I guarantee it. But the thought behind that is, okay, how do I now be developed to be a leader in my business as I'm completely changed the look of my business from today to last year? Go get the rock climbing coach. Get my point. Get the person that's been there, understands it, and can help you filter through it as well. You don't necessarily have to know your exact kind of work. I'm not an electrician. Sherri's an electrician. But it's a business and it's leadership. It's how you develop. That's the same across the board. Everyone's goals are slightly different, but we're humans. Businesses are operated and owned by human beings.
Yeah.
No matter how different we are, we're very, very much the same in how we think and the processes that we go through in our mind. And so if you all are ready to rock climb, find the right person to get to.
You can either climb the rock or scale it down. There's different ways of getting of the goal, I would say. Depends on
Both to get to the level you want to be at. Doesn't yeah.
You can either climb the rock or just get to the top and jump off with a parachute. Whatever floats your boat. Oh man, no, but I think that's a great analogy because sometimes you have to be that leader who's like, you know what, am I built for this? You know, could I mentally sustain this? And we're human, as you said, our egos get in the way. Our ego, our super ego, and our id, they kind of balance each other to some degree. And then we're like, oh, I can do this, and you're like, you don't want to say no that you can't. You don't want to show weakness because we have those things called, what are they called? Fear. They show up in this strange way, which really don't exist. And we shouldn't be afraid of anything, except for one or two things. But as a leader, sometimes a good leadership might say, hey, you know what? I've taken the company this far. Maybe it's time for someone else to take over, or let me mentor someone else to take it to the next million or the next $500,000, because for whatever reason. And I think that's also important for a leader to do that self-identifying, that self-awareness.
That's right. Yeah. It's a good point, right? And we teach on this a lot when it comes down to the ego. It's actually one of the principles in our 10 principles in our system. But see, the ego is okay, and we have to make sure we're clear. It's okay to have an ego. All humans need to have an ego in balance. That's what gives us confidence.
Mm-hmm.
Gives us the ability to say, I am the expert, and be okay with that. But there is that imbalance that happens as well, where, like you're saying, where as a leader, sometimes we feel, well, it's my business, it's my baby, I'm doing it my way. We made a lot of mistakes in that sentence. Another time too, right? It's not a baby, it's a machine. You have a purpose behind this machine. Perspective, right? But ultimately, right, it comes down to balance. It comes down to understanding it's okay, like you had mentioned. It's okay to realize I need to bring in other people here to get us to the next level. Even if that means you need to kind of move out of the way.
Yeah.
Kind of move out of the way. Right? There's the phrase, faith can move mountains. We've all heard that. Well, when it comes down to business and business success, there's strategy behind it, there's process, yes. There's an awful lot of faith that has to happen up here, and belief in who you are and your purpose, your vision, and what it is that you're focusing on and what your goals are. Being that that's the case, we have to look at it that way and realize that sometimes we have to step aside. Sometimes we get in our own way. We might be the mountain. That's the hardest mountain to move. So don't put yourself there.
Yeah.
Okay? I've had a lot of conversations with people in my lifetime, but the worst conversations I've had are with myself. Right? It's what we tell ourselves that define us.
Exactly. And that's I had a conversation actually this week just about that, where one of my buddies were asking me, hey, don't take this as a criticism. I'm like, are you kidding me? Have you listened to yourself speak to me? I'm the worst critic. I mean, each of us as individuals, we are our worst, hardest critic. It was funny because another friend of mine sent me a text with this really cute image, and it was kind of like I can handle your insults. I was I always, when I was a kid, I held I held my father's flashlight. You know,
Yeah.
you're like, keep the light on the thing, and then you get every, talk about your feelings getting hurt. So yeah, it's really about what we say to ourselves, and we are our worst critic. We really are. We don't realize it, but we are our worst critic in a lot of ways.
Yes. Yeah. And it can
Yeah.
develop into things like imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
Where you feel like, oh man, especially when you're first starting out in business, they can find out that I don't really know as much as I that I'm coming across. Maybe they're going to find out that I'm not as good at running this business as I think I, all of those thoughts are in your head, and it's okay to be honest with yourself. Like, you know what, I need to get help with this. Fine, just go get help. But that's what makes you better, right? Be around people that are better than you. Like Sherri said, we're the average of the 5 people we spend most of our time with.
Yeah.
Jim Rohn, that's a Jim Rohn. Okay, and Jim Rohn's one of my favorites, and he's right.
Yeah.
I mean, many of us during COVID turned into our own kids because that's who we hung around. Right? I'm teasing. That's what I was hoping it was. Like, you're the average of the 5 people that you spend most of your time with during COVID was probably your kids. But you can.
Yeah, definitely. No, that definitely makes a lot of sense. And that's actually a good point to make on top of the leadership element of a business. It's, you want to surround yourself, and you guys mentioned this before in different ways. You want to surround yourself with people who will push you. They may not necessarily be, this is a weird way of saying it. I'm not sure how else to phrase it, but they may not necessarily be at the same place where you are, whatever that place is. Or they might be a little bit ahead of where you are, or maybe behind. Not trying to compare yourself to other people, but in terms of just finding those individuals who are not just yes people. They're just like, listen, that's kind of stupid. That's not a good idea. But they will be honest with you and say, hey, I know you're trying to do this. You're acting dumb now. What are you doing? Hey, pull up your socks. What's going on? But they're still your friend, but they can still nail it to you with love and kindness, but be realistic with you. And I think that's probably one of the things that, I mean, you guys have each other, so I'm sure these conversations are amazing. So who are the other 3 people that are around you guys?
Yeah, well, you see, anyone that we're impacted by, right? And that's anyone that we spend most of our time with. It could be even a mentor we're reading books on, or it could be someone that we're watching trainings on. Who are we spending that time with? Who are we giving our mind and our ideas to? And for us, hey, I mean, it's us, and we hang around with high level professionals that have businesses that are larger scale than ours, and that can mentor us. We've developed our own internal quote unquote board of directors of these people that we could go to and at any moment in time when we hang around. We're part of networking groups with them. We're part of different committees and those types of things with these people, so that we can almost get some of that information from them to learn and to gain that knowledge. But on top of that, we have some others that we read and study between John Maxwell and Zig Ziglar and Tony Robbins, and all the reading material there. You become that, right? It becomes your way of living and thinking.
Right.
And that you realize, wow, this is working. You choose not to hang around and be around other people. You'll see that your surroundings will change. The people you used to have something in common with will change, even in small business. Because as your business grows, if you still stick around with the same people that are in business with, your business is going to be like theirs.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just the way it is.
Yeah. And sometimes it's recognizing that. Sometimes it changes without even you knowing. When you look back a couple of years back, you're like, wait a minute, how did this happen? And you just realize these things are either by selection or they just happen naturally because other people are like, because I noticed that, from other business owners I coach, they're kind of like, hey, my crowd changed over the years. I lost this friend, or we weren't as close. And I'm kind of like, well, did you change or did they change? What happened? you kind of want to discover that so that they're more aware of it and they don't take it personal. It's just that, your priorities change and your focuses change and who you are changes, and then your actions change. And then, how you treat other people hopefully changes for the better. So people either relate to that or they don't. And your circles obviously change. There's nothing, really necessarily wrong or right. It's not a wrong or right thing, I would say. It's not black and white in that way, but it's just these things happen. And it's just good to recognize it, because sometimes it'll happen and you wake up 2 years later, you're like, whoa, what, this is kind of interesting. How did I get here?
Yeah, spot.
Yeah.
And that's a perfect example of the evidence of focusing on your own personal growth in your business. Because as you grow, people that aren't growing with you aren't going to come along with you. They're just not. It's not. You're not going to be comfortable. You're not going to be the same with
Right.
those people. You want to live and you want to move into a bigger home. What do? We have two options. You can add on to your home or move to a place that's got a bigger one.
Yeah.
Either way, you're going to need people to help you do it, right? I mean, that's just we're going to do research. You're going to ask people to come in and look at. All the experts are going to, for some reason, we'll do that with our homes and our yard, but with our business, we're like, nope, I'll do it myself.
Yeah.
Well, see how far you get. 2 years later, you'll probably pick up the phone and give us a call, and we'll be there.
Exactly. Exactly. So before all this leadership coaching and executive leadership coaching that you guys do, and you develop your process, I think it was like 2005 when you guys started your business. What were you guys doing before that? What was your life before this?
Separate. We weren't even together before 2005. As a matter of fact, we started our business.
4 months into us being together, moving in, and then shortly after that, we did our own business. We started a business.
Only had met any other 4 months before we started our business outside. But so before that, we had two separate lives.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What were you doing? I know where I met you, but that wasn't what you were doing every day. But Sherri was in. I
was in the hotel
industry.
Yeah, I was in the hotel hospitality world. Is what I did prior to that.
And you were management. You were leadership there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, leading and growing my business, or at least the department I was with the part of. I always had a side hustle. Always did a dancer for over 20 years. So did like dance fitness classes. I used to teach or be a part of, something that always kept that for myself. And had that on the side. So we always had something on the side, some type of side hustle, as they say, just to have it. But in 2005 we came in. It was a multi-level networking, right? Multi-level
marketing company, network marketing company, a franchise kind of style with them, and we were very successful with it. Mm-hmm. But leadership had some weak points there, and we learned our lesson. And realize if we want to be really free and really be a free entrepreneur, we're gonna do this on our own, and that's what we did. I'm a psych major. So I was working in this as a social worker in that field, working with children and adults, and also had an IT background, started an IT background. And so I've got an IT background as well, which is where I ended up for a while, with inclusiveness into the leadership perspective. But I was executive director, been a director, management. Both of us started from the ground and worked our way up in these companies. So that kind of tells you where we were working for the man, which is okay. That's where you learn. And it's still okay when you're on your own. But I want to be clear about this. I think, and not everybody talks about this as a coach. And I think it's imperative that your audience understands this. Is when you're starting your business, even if you've started your business, you're a year into it, you're fairly new into it, and you're struggling, and it's okay to work for another company or work for a corporation, work for a big business so that you can fund your business until it gets off the ground and build it. It's okay to do that. There's nothing wrong with that. Don't feel jaded and saying, yeah, I own my own business. Be proud of that, but also say, but I also work for so and so because I'm building my business with their knowledge.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that, right?
Yeah.
That's what we were doing. Now we do it. This is what we do.
No, and I think that's a great perspective. That's something that you know, a lot of folks could look at it differently, where, you know, I again, when I started, you know, again, I was working for different organizations, different, you know, different, I used to work for the federal government. Before that, did some other stuff. And the one thing, when I started my business, the one thing I realized, and the one thing I always mentor other business owners, and even entrepreneurs, like, you know, students at universities, I always tell them, I'm like, hey, you want to start your own business? That's fine. Let's look at the reality, but, you know, let's encourage them to do that, but don't run away from a job. Look at it differently. You know, I try to tell them, you're a job, someone who's paying you as an employee, think of it as they're paying you, they're training you as they pay you.
Mhm.
So it's a training ground and you're getting paid. So you're going to college and they're paying you to go to college at their institution or their organization. So guess what? It's not a job. It's learn the skill set, learn, especially in the service industry. Like you know, you hear like a lot of folks in college, they're learning how to be a waiter or a waitress. It's kind of interesting because you're learning how to be excellent customer service individuals. That's a huge element in any business. So they're paying you to train you. Take that and make that skill set, start your business. So, you know, when people see it that way, they're like, oh yeah, that does make sense. I can actually work for a couple years, save my money, get all these skills, save the money, start the business, you know?
Or build it as you're working for these people, right? Take what you're learning and the money you're earning from and kind of fund your passion, right?
Yep.
That's that. It's and that's a very valid point. I mean, do you ever? I don't know if I need to go into a brain surgeon. I don't want the brain surgeon that's never worked on anybody yet. I want someone that's been doing this for a minute. that's probably had several hundred, if not more, surgeries. That has they've been practicing their craft. That's the ideal situation, right? Same with when you run your business and start your business. Well, practice your craft. And in the beginning, sometimes it's hard to practice your craft, depending on what it is that you're doing, if you don't really, you're not building that business enough yet. So how do you build your craft? You go out and you find a company that's going to pay you to work for them to do what your craft is. Then you get good. Then you get really good. Then you get great. Then you get, I need to go see that person go.
There you go.
And somebody else paid you to do it.
Yep. Yeah, and I think once you know, I did a couple of these talks to high school students, and when they saw it that way, it was like a few of them were like, I never thought of it that way. I said, exactly. I said, now when you approach a job, don't think of it as, that's 8 to 5 and I'm gonna, no. You're going to be trained and they're paying you to train. So have some semblance of an idea. You know, I'm not going to be here for, nothing wrong with being there forever. That's fine. But if your goal isn't to be there, then use that time to your benefit. And then it changes the outlook of your day. So it's just that perspective. It's just how you look at it.
So, appreciate the 8 to 5. Because if you become an entrepreneur, own your own business, that 8 to 5 doesn't exist. You don't do 8 to 5 Monday through Friday. Okay, doesn't work that way.
No, it goes from 8 a.m. to 5 a.m.
We should do that one day and have a show or do a live training on business ownership, the real story.
Yeah, that's that.
Yeah, I was going to add that I think one of the many lessons, but one lesson that my mom taught me, since you said, you know, you mentioned you spoke to high schoolers at a moment and preached to them that, listen, you know, look at it differently. Don't look at it as a job, but look at it as the skills. And it's funny because it reminded me of my mom saying something along the lines of everything is a stepping stone. And as soon as I grasped that concept, then I did not look at jobs as a job job. I actually aligned my values and what my goal was and what the industry I wanted to be in, and I aligned with my strengths of my skill set to the jobs, and it just happened naturally. So every job that I've ever looked upon of my career since I was 16 with my first job, there still was something that again was a stepping stone to get to that next whatever that next step was.
Yeah.
If I didn't go on this stone, and learn from the skills that you're talking about, I would have never gotten to that one.
You
And-
never know how to get together.
Right. Or just the
Yeah.
skill sets, because then you move on to your next, next job, career, whatever. Oh, I learned that from my other one.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
you gain, and it's that leveling, and it's kind of neat. I don't know. I looked at it as a stepping stone. Every stepping stone I learned along the way.
Yeah.
It's a good tip because for every business owner or anyone out there that's thinking about starting their business, that's a tip right there.
Mhm.
Start a business on something that you're good at and you're passionate about. Okay? If you're not quite good enough at it, but you're passionate about it, go get good. Go get great. Okay? And that's the way to do it. And not do it with somebody else.
And your purpose. That's a big.
Live in your purpose. Yeah.
And that's quite an interesting thing to say, because your background, psychology, this is what you're doing. You're using your psychology that you've learned in university to do what you're doing 20, 25 years later. That I would probably say that's like your 10th stepping stone per se, as just to use an analogy. And now you're at your 100th stepping stone. It's so important how when you're in your 10th stepping stone, you don't realize it until 20, 25 steps later, like, oh, wow, I never thought, me doing this degree and whatever, I'm using it now. And then you, Sherri, you're doing dance, and now you're a dancer. And now it's like, I think of it as you have to learn process, because dancing is very intricate. It's not easy. So what you're learning different systems to look at the rhythm and how do you get from point A to point B. And I think, when you have those skill sets, just those technical skill sets, and you apply it later in life, you realize, wow, this is amazing. I learned this when I was a kid. Now I'm using it. So some things come full circle. And that's the one thing I would also add, that, in the moment, you don't realize it. It's like after the moment, you're like, oh, wow, that was kind of cool. I remember my dad telling me this, and now I'm doing it today because I learned it in this particular moment. So yeah, that's pretty cool. That's really cool.
It all plays a part. Your experiences all plays a part in where your purpose puts you. It always does in some way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Always see that leadership, right? That in organization, it's they always called it. You have to climb the ladder to the top. Right?
Yeah.
And in business, a lot of people approach business that way. You've got to climb the ladder to the top or the next phase. What we're presenting out there to the world and to our community is, instead of the ladder, imagine you walking into the airport and you have an escalator that's going all the way up to the next level. Well, instead of an escalator, there's a ladder. You're going to think twice about climbing the thing. It's a lot easier having that escalator there, because you get there quicker, because you have a timeline, you have a goal, you have a vision where you need to be. What we are is we're that escalator.
Nice.
Take away that there's no need to have a ladder and climb it so difficult. You don't have to go that route. There is another route.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's well said. It's a great analogy. It's harder and building your escalator, it's about the goal, it's about your destination, it's about what goes into getting into your next goal, put it that way. So there's a lot there that's very much involved. So besides the leadership part, leadership and executive coaching, you mentioned a couple of pieces of your business. What's another element of what you guys do?
Sure. We also do corporate training. We do a lot of corporate training on communication and all the normal challenges, right? Communication and
navigating through corporate politics,
politics.
work-life balance, which is no such thing. We call it harmony.
Yeah.
So
time management, all those,
attrition.
Yeah,
attrition's huge
issues
when it falls for that. So there's a lot on that corporate perspective, and it really boils down to two things. It boils down to people and process. And I also throw in a third one is trust. That's really a deeper level for trust. There's lots of trust issues. Do you trust one-on-one on your employees? Do you trust your leadership? Do you trust your middle management? I mean, the whole gamut. And as businesses grow, that, trust is a big deal.
Kind
So
of revolves around trust.
it really does, if you know it or not. And that's where you need people, especially on the corporate level and the leadership on that level, and in C-suite levels particularly. You're always in the picture. And for us, we were able to help in allowing that space to have that individual or individuals to step out of the picture for a moment. As we say, step out of the sleeping bag, right? That's the story. But stepping out of that picture so you can see it at that high level. And
see it from a different perspective.
Right, see it a different perspective, seeing us at, some people call it visionary. So there are some people that are visionaries, they can do all that. Then there's others that are just below that. For example, he's more the visionary than I am, but I will pull the trigger and be like, okay, what do we need to do?
and I'll delay. I'm like, well, I haven't thought through it enough.
I'm like, just go. It doesn't have to be perfect. Let's just go.
You gotta keep going, right? Yeah, you gotta keep going. It's like an airplane. We take it when you get in an airplane, and I use the airport before as well. Whenever you get in an airplane, anyone's been on an airplane knows that then you're on the ground as you're taking off, right? You see everything looks a certain way, and as you're taking off, and as you get higher and higher up, that view changes. The view changes as you're going up, and all of a sudden everything looks like a circuit board. Everything's looks teeny and small, but the thing is nothing has changed. It's still the same thing. It's just a different perspective. You can see now from a different level, and that's the value there. Is that being able to step out, and that's where we help with that stepping out of where you are, your current situation, get out of it, so you can see, oh man, if I just did that, that's right, and we say, that's right, there you go, great idea, do that, and that's what it's all about.
Yeah, that's so important, because again, it's corporate leadership. It's a different realm, I would say, to a little bit of business ownership. But again, within the corporate entity, that corporate arena, let's just call it that, there are different elements to deal with, and there are different ways of dealing with those similar situations. So there's a lot. It's a different approach, I would say. It's a different tactic, I would say, in trying to get those results that they would like to see out of their organization. So yeah, that's kudos to you guys for jumping in that arena and getting that done.
Yeah, and again, that's something that we come from. So a lot of people start their own business like, I hated corporate. Yeah, there's certain things we don't like about corporate either, right? I mean, it's a big deal. But did we learn a ton from corporate? Why would we not take what we've learned and offer it back to them?
Right.
Doesn't make sense not to, right? Provide them some help and some solutions when they need it. Diversity and inclusion. We have a proprietary program. We've partnered with experts in the space that have developed this amazing program that only licensed holders can train and teach on and utilize for diversity and inclusion that is much needed. We offer that too. I think that we just had to. Like we're in these places where change happens. And when change happens there, it happens in the community and vice versa. And if we're going to be change agents, we've got to have the ability to offer them a program that's going to be rock solid and going to be impactful for not just their small corporate company in retrospect of the world, but the entire world. Yeah. And we have that with our diversity and inclusion program.
That's pretty cool. So the one thing that always comes to mind is whenever you like we go back to your client that went from 65 to 250 to to like 500,000 next year. Hopefully, I'm sure he'll get there with you guys. The one thing I always ask is, whenever someone changes for the better or changes period, what are some of the things that anchor people to keep them not just sane, but to keep them humble and anchors them to that ego element of the triad, I would call it, the id, super ego, and the ego. What are your recommendations for keeping a leader anchored in that moment as they grow their business over time?
Answer that real quick.
Go for it.
Yeah, it's actually purpose. We have learned and we've heard a lot of people have, you can have a passion about something, but passion will only get you so far. It's good to have passion, but then
I have passion to eat burgers, so you know without.
but
Right,
you need to have that purpose, and a lot of people forget about that. And your purpose will evolve over time, especially if you're a small business owner and growing, or you're already at that corporate level. But that's why they have retreats like what? Every quarter, every year, to have those big, hairy ideas and all.
Big, hairy, audacious goals.
Yeah, that. And
BHAGs.
BHAG, right?
That's a good corporate term for
Right.
you.
That's a corporate term for you. But
Although it's
still-
good for your business too.
but it's good for the business, right? It really is. And the bottom line is to find your purpose and to have that vision. So the purpose is your North Star. That is what
That's
is
your
going to
anchor.
keep, that's your anchor. That is what's going to keep driving your business, and to focus on that. And another thing to look at too is that whatever your purpose is, now we are very people centric. Now people centric, and that's we're very people focused. People before profit. It takes longer, but there's a huge benefit to that. Now, if you've seen organizations that you've seen out there that they flipped it. They at first were people focused, and then a new person in line gets involved, wants to shake
Or a
things
new
up.
CEO or a new COO, or somebody comes in, and president,
right? And then their
The focus
focus
changes,
is on the stockholders. The focus is on how much money that everybody else can get at that top level. And it trickles down, and that's where it gets muddled. That's where middle management gets hung up. That's where the employees get hung up. That's where toxic, work cultures tend to bubble up. Then there's that disconnect.
Mhm.
So when you don't have that just cause, and that's something that Simon Sinek, which I fully believe in, and what he's saying here, that just cause, that purpose of that bigger issue or bigger why, right? Then things fall apart. Things fall apart when it's just focus on the money, focus on the stock market. You'll get far, you'll get money. That's fine
to a point,
to a point,
but you'll lose everybody else around you.
but you can lose. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So it's that. Yeah, she's right. It's you're anchoring in purpose. Everyone has a different purpose. Why they start their business, why they're in business. Even a big corporation. One little slight adjustment to the main original purpose can change the entire dynamics of the organization.
Mhm.
It could that one small glimpse of change can go from our attrition rate is virtually 0%. We love they all stay with us, to making one slight change in just their mission statement could all of a sudden increase that attrition to 52, 62, 70%. I've seen it. We've seen it.
Well, we lived through it.
We've
so.
lived through it. It's just one slight change. It's that purpose. Now, you wear glasses. I wear glasses occasionally as well. And this isn't, and Sherri does. So this is an experience that all glasses wearers will understand. If you have a dishwasher at home and you've got your glasses on and the dishwasher has been going, so you open it up and you're too close, what's going to happen to your glasses? It's going to get foggy. The oven the same way. You run outside when the temperature changes, it gets foggy. That's what happens to purpose when we diverge away from it. It becomes foggy. But notice how quick it can change if we revert back to the temperature, balanced temperature, whatever it is. The fog can go away or we reinitiate it. It's the same thing in business and corporations. Sometimes we lose track of purpose. We've got to regain that. So what is the purpose? And so we do with our clients, our partners, and say, I don't know what's going on. It's all over the place. Okay. Well, what is your purpose? Let's go back to that. Because we've already done it. We've already done your purpose, your why, your passions. We've identified what that purpose is. You've identified what your mission is. Go back to that. That's your North Star. Is what you're doing now and the decisions you're making now in line with that? Are they in harmony? No? Then don't do them. That's your answer. It doesn't, that's it.
Yeah.
So to answer your long-windedly answering your question, that is the anchor of any business owner and company, is the core purpose, core values, and mission of the company.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I would definitely take it a step further as well, and sort of I would challenge also the corporation or the organization, or the business owner to say, you know, if there's a question of the purpose and things have shifted, I would also question, was your purpose actually well defined?
That's right.
Because if your purpose is your anchor and your anchor doesn't move and you're moving, then you have a weak anchor. So you definitely want to take a minute to say, hey, let's take another look at this purpose, because maybe that's not your real purpose. The road to hell was paved with good intentions, and the intent might be great, but we're heading in the wrong direction, folks. Stop. Let's repave that road and give it a new direction by looking at, what are we doing? Because, for example, I use the example of Enron a lot years ago. You guys remember Enron when everything just went collapsed. That was sort of like a function of leadership. Great intentions, great leadership. The outcome was just a whole different story. It wasn't what was expected. So the purpose, again, that may have been the internal purpose of a few, but that filtered through a subset of the company. And we all know what happened to Enron. So to me, that's also an example of the leadership style. And again, how people can be, I would use a strong word, be either use deception or be deceived by that type of leadership because of lack of purpose or loss of purpose.
Yeah, and it's that influence that makes that happen, doesn't it? It influences the masses and influences your decisions.
Yep.
It's that, and that's what leadership is. It's all about the influence and how you use it.
Yep.
Right, the direction you're going in.
Yeah, and I think it's also great that you guys are doing this, because when you have that purpose, that business purpose, for example, this is organization, corporation, that business purpose, you definitely want to codify it. You definitely want to have it written down. You definitely want to have it so that it's not connected to the individual. Now it's connected to anyone who walks through these doors. This is our way of doing things. This is how we do X, Y, and Z. These are our expected outcomes. It's sort of like the purpose takes over, the purpose guides the leadership, even though the leadership guided the definition of the purpose. The purpose has to take over the leadership to say, whoever comes in, that purpose is anchored, it's in concrete, it's not going anywhere, no matter who's there. And that's so important to look at, and for business owners to realize this, because they may sell their business or they may hire people. Okay, why am I here? What are we doing? And if that's not well defined, we could have a lot of issues.
Exactly. It's like a lighthouse, right? It's got a structure.
Yeah.
But there's the purpose of the lighthouse is there to create structure so it's tall enough for the light to actually work and move, right? For the boats in the sea, and all that. But if that light goes out, that lighthouse doesn't serve a purpose.
Right.
So our influence needs to stay lit and connected to that purpose, or the lights will go out. And all of a sudden, we're going to look at it like, why did we build this business?
Exactly.
Business is failing the first 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, right?
Yep, 100%, 100%. So when you're talking about the diversity and inclusion element of the business, we're in the year 2021, and there's a lot of different conversations around that topic. Hot topic, cold topic, it's in our face. How do you address that issue within businesses and organizations? It's an interesting conversation. It's an interesting topic from many different perspectives. What would be the one or two perspectives that you guys focus on to deal with that particular opportunity within the organizations?
Humanness. That's how. The challenge is that us as humankind and man on this planet face are problems we've created. And the challenges that we're facing with understanding one another's viewpoint, opinion, color of their skin, sexual orientation, where they're from, whether you're male or female, transgender, all of those prejudices and challenges and ideals, all are our fault. Humans have created these ideas when at the core, we're all humans. And if you eliminate every human being on this planet and leave yourself by yourself, what are you going to do? There's nobody to do anything for. We need one another. And understanding the full glimpse, the full scale of what diversity, equity, and inclusion truly means is humanness. Understanding that diversity, equity, and inclusion is not about just race. It's about people and humanness. It's not just about sexual orientation. It is about humanness. Everything in DEI is about being a human being and understanding people. And the conversation, if we get a conversation, if a company comes to us, it's because of one of two things. They got to check off a box because of compliance. And number two, there's been a problem that they need to address.
Yeah.
Those are the only two reasons that any corporation wants to do some DEI training, unless they're some of the more modern companies. Then I can list off some of those that are just always up there. Majority of them are because millennials have started these companies, and millennials know where it's at. They have the view and understand that there's a bigger impact on the global picture of humans over time. We got a lot to learn from them. But I hope that answers your question. But that's what it comes down to. Diversity and inclusion is not a monster that we need to understand and unpack. Humanness is what needs to be unpacked. And that's what our diversity, equity, and inclusion program does. It unpacks us as people and opens up the conversation to be able to look at and listen to other people's experiences and appreciate those experiences and come to realization that those experiences is what creates the person that we're right there in front of. And how can we be a supporter of it?
Yeah.
I would add too, with that particular program that we have, is that it actually has everybody playing a role.
Everyone has a role.
Everybody has a role in it. It's not just one person over another or the face of.
Even the obstructor. There's an obstructor who I want nothing to do with this type of change. Mm-hmm. It's okay. We all play a role.
Yeah, I think that's that's a great perspective, because what comes to mind for me in this particular conversation, in the way, in the context that you presented it, it's humanism, being a human, understanding each other, because we're pretty much all the same. I mean, if you speak to anyone, if we were all blind, right? God forbid we all become blind. Well, we're blind in some ways, even we can see, but we're all blind. And we just sat in a room. We don't know who's around. We don't know what they look like. And we just sat in a room. We can find a huge common denominator. I would probably say over 80% of we can agree to, but then the minute we start looking at each other, it's a whole different ballgame. So in a way, I like the way you present the context of that. You constructed the context because, you can take it to say that understanding each other was actually there prior to even the conversation of what's happening now.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, so we want to take it back to basics, I would say. Right now it's just, the words are being used, but the context, I think, for what we're talking about, seems to be foundationally the same. It's just, I don't really care what you look like, it doesn't matter, but can we sit across the table and actually just have a conversation? And do we have the capacity as individuals to make that happen? Yes, we do. And to be honest, in some cases, we just don't, because of different circumstances and maturity levels and things. But I think that is the challenge. And I love the way you put that in the context.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's exactly right. If we can look at it from a different lens, if there is a way that we could swap out the lens so you can see it, right? Just what is it really like? And so we can how can I eliminate some of these implicit biases that maybe I grew up with? I'm not racist. I don't care if that person is black or white or is gay or, well, but you should care. That's the point, because they care. It's their life. It's okay to care about the person being a human and humanness, and you don't have to necessarily agree with their position.
That's it.
That's what makes us human. It's okay to not agree with their position, but we can still be humans and respect it.
Right.
That is what we believe diversity, equity, inclusion is. Looking at people as humans and realizing that there is huge value in the differences, but what's the same is what's going to help us overcome the differences.
I definitely agree with you on that context, because that's so important, to understand the context of it, where at the end of the day, when you and I get cut, we both bleed the same stuff, blood, right? I mean, I'm just breaking it down to probably overly simplifying the situation. The challenge is in its implementation. I think people are so, and that's another conversation, but people are so dogmatic in their ideology and their isms and what it's connected to because of different agendas that are pushing this. But I think starting off by understanding exactly what you guys are saying, and I definitely hear you on it, is just when you sit across the table as individuals with 2 or 3 or 4 people, having the ability just to have a normal conversation and just saying, we don't have to agree. We're never going to agree 100%, but at least we can respect each other. That's the key term. And I think that piece of that conversation has been lost in many different ways.
It has. And I think it's important for us, and I've given a credit to the millennial generation. I'm going to give them credit again, because I think it's important for us to look at diversity, inclusion, big picture thinking from the mind of a millennial, but with our experience in our generation, depending on the generation we're in, looking at it from both lenses. You see, just look at children and babies. They don't know any difference. They know why? Because they're a baby, we're human, they're human, they just do their thing, right? Children don't see the differences that we begin to see because of the impacts and influences and what we've been around and been impacted by when it comes to the media or family or culture that has made us believe and feel a certain way. Well, we have the ability to unpack it, but we can't do that until we're in the same room and open up those discussions and just realize at the core, we all agree, at the core, we're all human beings. We're all part of the same human race that has multiple differences within it. If we can understand that picture, we can begin to unpack it.
Yeah, I kudos for saying that, because it's interesting. I remember as I grew up, I grew up in the Caribbean. I was born and raised in the Caribbean. I moved to the States in 1999. And the one thing I remember growing up was, we always took care of family, right? And family was our tribe. We always called each other, this is my family. Even my friends growing up, that's my family. We all didn't look the same. We all came from different parts of the world, but we never recognized that. I'm being honest. It was just, that's my tribe. And when you look at, because I always thought, where did this start off with? Where did this stuff came from, right? What was the origins of it? And then when you go back to back to the early 1600s, 1500s, we were still calling each other my tribe. We were identifying groups of people as tribes. we never really identified each other by skin color until I think it was in the mid 1700s. You know, a German scientist came out there and create the colorism system. He divided human society by color. And that was in 1779 or something like that. A German scientist, Blumenthal or Friedrich Blumenthal or something like that. And because I really looked into it, I'm like, where does this thing start? Because, you know, I'm a Bible reader. I believe in my God and Jesus Christ. And in the Bible, we talk about tribes. That's the historical way. And where did we lose that? You know, that was a question that I had because, you know, where did we lose our humanism? Where did we lose our connection to each other? And you're right. I love the way you put that together because it did start with us as humans. We're the ones responsible for breaking up the tribe by putting us in different boxes and categories and divide and conquer, but we're just dividing and conquering between each other.
It's happened over the years, right? I mean, you go back to Romans, and you got the Romans and the Jews, and you got the Romans, and you got this, and then you go to another country, and you've got this tribe against this tribe. There's been this, and I'm with you there, right, biblically. But even in historical evidence has shown that the conflict between human races was based upon an influence of an ideology of somebody, somewhere, somehow.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it was because of, and they're all different, because you take one story of the, you know, why the Romans and the Jews have this rivalry. Well, there's reasons. There's historical reasons, but is it legitimate as a human? That's a question, right? And there's hundreds and thousands of all of these different types of struggles over the years and still today. And what we now do is we've got a name for it. We've put names to it now,
Right.
As opposed to conflict. Because we're not resolving the conflict, we've allowed it to be band-aided politically, religiously, et cetera, with the idea of racial dominance or sexual dominance or male dominance, whatever you want to call it. It's these ideas that we have invented as humans that have created what we have today. So we've got to come together to realize that. We can't bury what we've done. We can't bury history, because that is history. That's what's gonna burn us and give us the fire needed to resolve the conflict. And not everybody's gonna have these same ideas, and that's okay. If somebody says, I know people personally that are very proud to be a racist. Okay. And in this country right now, you have a right to be, within limits. You can voice your opinion, at least right now. Right?
Yeah.
And that's a little sketchy sometimes.
Yeah.
But point being is, we're human.
Yeah.
And the only way we're going to make change is by our influence. And the only way we're going to use our influence is we make a choice. We're going to use it on purpose for good or on purpose for bad. No, for us, it's for good, because we want to bring people back to that humanness.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's not an easy task. But there is a way to do it. I have to admit, there is a way to do it. There really is a way to do it. You know, so there's a lot of different strategies and tactics. We won't get into those, but I think at its core, what you're saying is so true. And again, we go back to having the 5 people around you, right? You want to make sure that those 5 people around you who influence you are of a similar mindset, because you definitely want to be in a position to say, hey, you know what, enough is enough. We all agree, but it seems like we choose to highlight our disagreements. Why don't we start highlighting our agreements, and we can start working on that? Because our disagreements are just so minimal. I'll be honest, I think they're minimal. From everyone I'm hearing, I'm like, that's interesting. They're not being an evil person. They just have a different way of trying to do good, that they see it from their perspective. Okay, that's great. Let's discuss that. Let's discover that. Let's figure that out. and then figure out maybe a better way to do it, that we can do it more, together as a group and move forward as individuals, as human beings.
How do we harness it, right? It's like the invention of electricity. If they had the idea, ooh, this is great, and they only have electricity in their workshop and they never harness that to have it all over the world, we'd never have experienced that amazing invention. It's like that with people,
That's why it always says about, we're always better together and not separate. We don't have to be on individual islands.
Right.
Right.
And it's okay. And this is reality. I know we're getting close on time, but I want
You're fine.
point is that in our journey, but in my journey specifically, and we're Sherri and I've done this together, to fully understanding the impact of diversity, equity, and inclusion as a whole, and how that impacts the human race, which everybody's a part of. Once we realize the impact, and it took us last year to be woken up to all those events that happened. George Floyd being murdered, and he's not the only one, and it just continues. And for us to say, why are we not doing anything about this? We're walking around here owning this business, and we talk about people and personal growth, but we're not doing anything. We need to stand up, and we need to have a voice. As leaders, every leader needs to have their voice heard. Otherwise, you're not really a leader. You can't say I'm a leader, and then when things get heated, you sit back and wait for other people to say something. That separates the pretenders from the players when events like that happen. Okay, we realize we had to do something, and so we sat back and said, "Well, I just got a call. I've had friends. We both have had Black friends. I've had Asian friends. I'm about close friends, like family, like with my tribe, like you're saying. Over the years, I've never considered that I may have implicit biases or may have a different opinion, or I need to learn more about. I didn't dig enough to find out what their experiences are. I just thought my experiences and theirs are pretty simple, must be similar. We're both humans. That's not the case.
Right.
Okay. A Black man my age is going to have a very different life experience than me. And I needed to understand what that looks like. And so we went and connected with, we said, no, our friends, can you please just tell me the story? Tell me your stories. Really, why is it that having Uncle Ben on the box of rice is wrong and bad? I don't understand. Please tell. When he tells you, well, now it makes sense. And he tells you the stories about these things that I didn't fully understand as a white man. And people that look like me aren't going to fully understand it. And so that's what we did. We connected with our friends we connected with our LGBTQ plus friends in their community and said, please tell us what we need to know, what we're not seeing, and what is our biases here?
Well, as a business, we want to be an ally, right?
Right.
We can't just work with one segment of the market and then pretend the other markets don't exist.
It can't be in people business and segregate people. It doesn't make sense. And I know that's why there's a lot of fire behind the government, because government separates people, but yet they're supposed to be for the people. So I get all that, but only us are going to be able to make that change right from here, right from where we are, and take time and just sit with people, ask them their experiences, and listen, so that you can appreciate why do they get so upset when things happen? Why do some people destroy buildings when there's a race, when somebody of their race is murdered? Why? There's reasons. Doesn't say you have to agree with their action, but you need to understand and respect the why. But you can't unless you find out. And that's what this does, is opens up those discussions so that we can all understand one another the best way we can. And that's by experiences.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point, because it's actually digging deeper into those reasons, right? Not just the surface stuff, but getting really deep into, because it becomes cultural. It becomes a cultural reason, because it becomes part of that identity of that culture. Like, this is why this occurred. This is why these things, this is the reason for the response. So in a lot of ways, digging deeper into, why things happen, it's so important. The where the rubber meets the road is having, those individuals come together and have the ability to have the conversation, right? That I think is where the rubber meets the road. That's where the big bucks are from a business perspective. It's really, could everyone come together and have that conversation? There's a great story, and his name escapes me. I wish I remember his name. He's in Maryland. He actually he was on the Joe Rogan podcast. Shout outs to having him on this podcast. And he actually just was in a bar. He's a musician in a bar. And he heard on someone else, this was like years ago, he heard another gentleman say something very derogatory about him or about his person. And without even thinking twice, he just sparked the conversation and said, hey, what's going on? Let's just sit and talk. So it's the ability of both parties or multiple, all those individuals to take a deep breath, have an ability to just sit and talk. Because here's what happened. In the story that he's saying, the individual was a Klansman. The Klansman and him 20, 30 years later are best friends. And he actually gave up he actually quit the Klan because he was like, hey, you know what? I understand why I thought the way I thought because it was a lie and I changed. But it all sparked with the ability and the understanding to say, as a leader, as an individual leader, to say, self-awareness. I'm not going to fight. I'm not going to burn a building. Let me just take a step back and we're both going to talk.
Stuff.
Yeah. I think that's the human story.
Fantastic story. Yeah. Matter of fact, I believe that musician, he's still, every time that a Ku Klux Klan member resigns, they give them their robe.
Yes.
As the memento of I've helped have these conversations. Yeah, that's a perfect example of what we're talking. It doesn't take everybody. It only needs to take one.
Yep.
Few, and it begins. It'll happen. Right? Every single major accomplishment in human history started with one person, and one person making that influence.
Yeah, I'm trying to look up things so I can give it proper credit.
Yeah, and as I saw a biography on it, I believe online or something. It was a great story. Very impactful.
Yeah, he's based in here, and he's from Maryland, and I hope I get his Daryl Davis. That's his name. Daryl Davis.
Relationship with them. Okay. They allow him to be with them occasionally. Like he can get,
yeah.
It's amazing. And it's only because of, like you said, let's have a discussion. Now it's going to take both people to be open for that discussion.
That's the trick.
Right? But even if that person is not open for that discussion, your response is what's going to be remembered.
Yes.
And everybody around you might be considering having that conversation because of the influence you had on how you responded.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, I hope a lot of people who listen to this will look up Daryl Davis and find out who he is. And he's right here in Maryland. You guys are in South Carolina, North Carolina?
North Carolina.
You're not, so you actually do both Carolinas, North and South. Your business is huge. So yeah, Daryl Davis is the one who actually did that, and he's been doing it for 20, 30 years. And he didn't fight them. He was just like, hey, why did you join the Klan? And
Talk about it.
yeah, you just talk about it, and he changed hundreds of people.
Yeah, just by listening to their story, and then them being okay. So, well, yeah, let me tell you. Might as well listen to your story. So, and then he tells them his story, and the next thing you know, like, wow, we have a lot more in common than I've been told our whole life.
Exactly. And part of it is just, there's a whole slew of things that we can tease out of that.
Highly recommend people look at it.
Yeah. The number one thing, like you're saying, like what you guys are saying, is having the ability to take a step back and just say, hey, let's chat. And that's it. That's all it took. That's what he did. Great example. That's all he did. So this was a great conversation. I really enjoyed this, and I know we're way over, but I know I'm standing between you and your weekends. I don't want to get squished. So what are one or two things that you would like to leave our listeners with to say, hey, if you're gonna be a business leader, organizational leader, what are one or two tips you'd like to leave people with?
Yeah,
Can I start?
I do. Yeah, there's definitely personal development. Find out, and because we were said it from the beginning, it's all about you, and it begins and ends with you. So personal development is key, and by one example of that is to pick up a book, not only just read it, but then apply of some of those great folks and great leaders that we talked about. You know, John Maxwell, Brian Tracy, Zig Ziglar, just to name a few out there. Simon Sinek, any of those, and really start to apply some of those concepts into your own life.
Nice.
And I would say from that perspective, when you start to see yourself from a different lens, and as you grow, you're going to see your business a different way. And as you see your business a different way, remember that it's okay to be okay with, I can't do this by myself, right? The ego needs to be pushed aside a little bit sometimes. We've got to suppress it. We got to put it back in the cage once in a while and realize we got to bring someone in that, or people that could give us that understanding of where it is we are, where we intend to be, and how to get there. But understand something, as you grow and as you see things from that lens, from that perspective, and you bring the right coach in, the right person in, or people in to help you, guide you in that process, the questions that are asked and the thoughts that you begin to have are going to be significantly different than before, because you're going to see them from outside the picture, and you're going to begin to build that machine in a way that's going to take you from where you are now to where that big picture is, where you want that business to be. Yeah. So understand it, bringing people in, that's what you need to do.
Awesome. Well, this was a pleasure. I hope you guys had a good time here today. I thank you so much, Lou and Sherri. Thanks for setting this up today. And I know you guys are quite hectic, so getting on your calendar was a challenge. So thanks for doing this.
Oh, you bet. Thank you for having us. We love it.
Oh yeah, and maybe hopefully in a year or two I can have you guys back, and you guys can give me an update as to how'd your client do? Did they get to $1 million? And all the other great stuff that you're doing down there in North Carolina.
Absolutely, we'd love to do that. And anybody can certainly, your listeners can reach out to us. Just go to loueverett.com, and our phone number is there. We actually answer the phone, kind of crazy nowadays. But you can email us, call us, talk to you. We love it. Feel free to reach out. Love to hear from you.
Cool. All right, guys. Well, thanks again.
You bet.
All right,
Take care.
Take care.